There we go.
Yay.
That was a journey and a half. So, hi. There's so much glare on my glasses. This is the problem with wearing glasses and not actually knowing how to set up any of this stuff. Oh! I just want to have some decent. You know what? The light from the actual door is also going to glare on my glasses. So, you're just not going to see my eyes today, which is fine. You don't need to see my eyes. You just need to hear my words. So, here we are. Let me just start out with small kind Chathams. I recognize Steam is late. It was only going to be like 2 minutes late because of me. I got distracted watching my cats are crazy. I got distracted watching some of the upcoming movies for Netflix, and but that was only going to be like 2 minutes late. That was all that I was going to cause, and then all of the technical issues with my computer happened, and so now we're small kind late for the stream. Just gonna lower this little bit, little bit. Perfect. So I was gonna make a small kind late for the stream. Then technology made us long time late for the stream. So here we are. And I feel like I'm super overdressed because you can't really tell, but I'm also wearing like this maxi dress or maxi skirt with this like earrings in the top and everything. I feel small kind of overdressed, but at the same time, it was all for convenience because the maxi skirt is just a hands-free blanket, and that's all I wanted. Like, I want to not have to wear pants, but also have a blanket on me at times. That's the goal for my staying at home period. But it's late. We started late. We're probably still gonna run for like a full 30 minutes. Like the usual, get all that down. But let's start with just going over like 5 things you need to know about the Martians. So one, this takes place in a time where we've had several like base walks on Mars. Two, like the crew we're focused around for this is the Ares 3 crew. Ares 3 like being like the mission name, and then you have the crew from that mission. They're out there, they get to Mars, and on the sixth sol, they don't call them days, they call them sols because Mars has 30 minutes longer a day than Earth. So conversions. So on the sixth sol out on Mars, the team has to evacuate because there's a really strong storm and wind, and it's blowing so hard that it's starting to tip over their ship to get back, and they need that ship to get back home. So they have to evacuate, and that's in order to like be able to ever leave ever. Three, through like there was some absolute nonsense that happened. You have this guy Mark Watney, who was part of Ares 3 crew. As they're trying to evacuate, he gets hit by some pole. It pierces his body, and like just the entire gust of the wind plus the force of his pole just throw him back, so they can't find him. They assume he's dead because his vital signs on his like suit, on his spacesuit, say that he's died. But in reality, it pierced his suit, and like he laid down face first in the dirt, and that caused the blood to drip onto the like where the hole was, and that because of the atmosphere of Mars, it dried up and was able to create enough of a seal for the whole thing to repressurize his suit, give him air, everything, and he was fine. And so now we have this guy who is left behind on Mars. He is forced to just try and figure out how to survive. At the moment, he has no means of communication with NASA. So he's just trying to figure out how to survive. He mostly does that. He does end up finding a way to communicate with them for a period of time. And then what was I going to say? He is an engineer and he is a botanist. So he uses those skills with him to try and figure out what he needs to do. He uses like math and science and stuff like that to try and figure out like how long his supplies will last. And then obviously that's not going to last long enough. It's not going to last him 4 years till they send another probe for the next mission, and because like their timetables have them able to build and set up another probe for another mission in 4 years. And so he's like, if they don't know I'm alive, how can I like make my food last that long? he ends up growing potatoes on Mars, and he uses that to help extend his life period. A lot of nonsense happens, so they have to change the plan several times over. Number 4 is literally the world is pulling together to try and help this man out. Like, you have NASA, the United States is putting so much funding into NASA so that way they can try and get this man off of Mars. And then you have China donates a rocket they made in order to be able to try and help get this guy off of Mars. And so the world is pulling together to find him a way back home. Their first plan failed, and the next plan that they have that like is less risky is not really, there's not a high chance of it working. So what ends up happening is the Ares 3 crew, just as they get back to Earth when they're supposed to be able to just dock and go home, they pull a Yui and go around the Earth, use the Earth's gravity to like launch them back, and they go back to Mars to try and save him. And number 5, in the end, everything worked out, everyone survived, and deep down, we all love each other and want to take care of each other because we're all human beings here. So I didn't mind this book. This was a good book. It was a very interesting book, because the thing that is very interesting to note of this book is most of it, whenever you're from like the Mark Watney, I'm very certain, Mark Watney, whenever it's from his point of view, it's coming from a diary entry, like he's logging his days and his time there, and so that's the point of view you get from him. The tone kind of threw me off a little bit at times, because like you have this guy who it feels like he's trying to be very casual, but like he's literally just cussing. He goes off at some point about how he wants to have sex with a Martian woman because it's been like a year and a half since he's seen a woman before, and it like those things make it feel like he wants to be super casual, but the dialect that he uses necessarily isn't always very casual, and makes me feel like this may have been written like outside of the US. I'm not sure, but it feels like the character is trying to be casual, but it's not written in like a very casual vernacular, in like kind of slang and just relaxed tone is one thing that threw me off. What I do really like about this is, I'm not sure if it's well researched or if the author, because I think he is a scientist. The author is a scientist of sorts, maybe. Yes, science and stuff like that. The way it's written is really well researched, and it makes sense. The things that are going on make sense. So you have parts where he's just talking about how this and this happened, how he's like figuring out how to even be able to grow potatoes on the planet, and it makes sense, and I'm along for the ride because it makes sense, because I can buy into what he's saying. And that's one of the issues I had with the book I read a long time ago, Optimizing America, where like the politics and even the financial like strategies and theories that he was presenting did not seem like they would even kind of work, but he was pushing them so hard, and so it was really hard to read the book, because it's like, no, I genuinely don't think that's gonna work. I genuinely don't think that many people would buy into this, because it does not seem like it's going to work. So why am I reading this for the 80th time? But when you're talking about a lot of the science and the logistics that Mark Watney's doing while he's on Mars and trying to figure out how to survive, it does genuinely seem like it is something that it does seem like things that could work. And there's no point while I am reading this where I'm like, oh my God, like it's so unbelievable. There's no way he'd know to do that, because we're talking about like an astronaut. It's not a world in which everyone just kind of goes off into space and this guy happens to get stranded somewhere. It's like an actual astronaut. We know astronauts to be people who are like super smart, are super logistical. They go through so much training to be prepared for anything and to be prepared to handle a lot of these problems. And so it is very believable that he would have either already had or been trained to have the skills necessary to complete a lot of the tasks that he is given in this in this book, and so it's easy to buy into because of not only the way it's presented, the information that's presented, but also because you're using characters that should be able to have that knowledge that they're passing off that the character does, which I really do appreciate. There was some, I will say though, there was one point where I kind of like got lost in the science that he was talking about, and that was specifically where he is trying to form he's trying to go on essentially like a cross planet trip. I don't think it's that far, but he was trying to go a very, very long distance when none of their materials are designed for that. All of their materials are designed for them to maybe go like a mile or two away from their like main housing space while they're in space. They have this they call it the hab, and that's like where they're supposed to be staying. That is where they're supposed to be just surviving and doing research, stuff like that. Their entire mission was designed so they really shouldn't have to go that far away from that area, and he has to cross a lot of distance and a lot of space in order to get to a spaceship that was supposed to be for the next crew that came in for the Ares 4 mission. He has to take their spaceship, so because let me explain real quick. For their spaceships, they have one ship that drops them off, one ship that takes them up to the sky, and then one ship that is supposed to actually travel between Earth and Mars. So they have 3 different ships. He's supposed to take their ship to fly out of the planet, but it's super far away, and so he has to like jerry-rig a whole bunch of stuff in order to get it to work. And at some point, he has to try and figure out how to like keep something warm and like heat something up. And they go into some science, like, it makes sense. I can visualize it, but I can visualize what they ended up with, but a lot of the steps along the way just kind of like, I don't fully need to understand this. I get it. I get the point. That's really the only point in which I got lost in some of the science that they were discussing, though. Next thing I want to talk about is the potatoes. As I'm sure you're curious, if you've actually never read this book before, I'm sure you want to know what was up with the potatoes in the thumbnail. So, like I said, he was planting potatoes, and he was like working so hard. He went through so much effort to be able to figure out how to grow potatoes on Mars. And you're there for the entire thing. He's pouring his heart out to this notebook that he's writing in because he doesn't even think he's going to survive. And there gets to a point where essentially the havoc small kind of explodes. Like nothing, it's not like a fire explosion. It's just the pressure just pushes out and everything collapses. And it kills the potatoes. Like it freezes because it like sucks the water out of the soil that they're growing in. It freezes over everything, and all the potatoes died. And I felt robbed because like if you watched any advertisement or heard about this book, the one thing that people are going to tell you is like he grows potatoes in space. So I thought the potatoes were going to be like the wingman of this story. They died halfway through, and it broke my heart. I was so sad. Like, he still had enough potatoes to help him survive a decent amount of time, but that just added, like, time crunches and stuff, and he was no longer, because all the soil had died, and so a lot of the bacteria that he needed to help enrich the soil also died, and so no more potatoes in space, and so that just broke my heart. I was disappointed, but now you don't have any potatoes in this story. And also, let me explain the other half of the thumbnail. He has like 2 things they get super sick of during the story, because everyone was able to bring their own laptop and use said laptop to like bring some entertainment. So your month of because it was supposed to be just a month that they spend on Mars. He ends up being there a year and a half. And you wanted to bring some entertainment for your month on Mars. And he, like, in terms of music, he only has access to disco. And so he's watching disco for a year and a half. And on that same person's computer who had the disco, they also have just like so many, essentially every 70s TV show they have. And so he's watching reruns of that show, and he's like just listening to all of the disco, and he is eating all of the potatoes, and that's just the experience that he's having while he's stuck on Mars. And that's what the other half of the thumbnail is. Now let's go. I will say that there are, because like I said in the story, if you're looking at the story, and when you're in the points there from his point of view, you are then watching and hearing it from like a diary point of view. It's like his diary, his log. Then after that, what happens, and what I really like, is it does occasionally, more than occasionally, but it does cut to the people on Earth, and it cuts to the Ares 3 crew as they're like going through space to travel back to Earth. And it is the funniest stuff I've ever, like, watching the people on Earth as they find out that he is still alive, they're just so stressed. They are freaking out. They have no idea how they're going to tell, like, the media about this whole situation. They are just having a heart attack trying to make heads or tails of this whole situation. They just left a person on Mars, and they're going to have to answer to that. And just seeing them freak out over that was so funny. And then you cut to the Ares 3 crew, which is like these people who have been like for several years just on this like ship, and they're freaking out. They're upset, but they're also bonding together. There's a point where there's like, it's not like an actual romance or anything like that, but you do have these two that hook up because like they actually do have feelings for each other, is what it says. Again, it's like literally a paragraph of this entire book is devoted to that. And you just have the captain, like they're having an issue with one of the rooms. One of the rooms is malfunctioning, and it's causing things to overheat in that room. And so like the captain's like, okay, you take his room, he'll just sleep with her. And they're like, oh my God, how did you know? Are we in trouble? Captain's like, guys, we just abandoned the order to land the ship. We're going to be on the ship for another couple of years. I don't care. And so, like, seeing the interactions with the people other than Mark Watney as well, and seeing people react to this whole situation I find very amusing. I think it can be really funny. Like, they're all, like, stressed down at NASA working overtime, trying to figure out how they would be able to save his life. And then they just get so sassy with each other. It's really funny. I feel like if you're not even interested in like the parts and the science that's dealt with in this book, go back and just read through the interactions of the people in Mars, like on NASA, just patrolling the situation. It's funny. They're so amusing with each other. I do like it. Okay. This is the rough part that I want to get to. And before I get into it, I do want to say, as per usual, I am not claiming to be like some super duper uber schnuber book writer, or I'm not saying I'm like the best author there ever was. I'm not saying my word is law, anything like that when it comes to a book. But you know, I'm allowed to have an opinion. So here it is. I had so many problems with tension buildup in this book. Like there was so much just natural tension that was going to exist because of the situation that you've made. And a lot of the issues they brought in, there were a lot of points where they kind of overdid it to try and create tension. And it got annoying, like to the point where like I was skimming through the last major conflict of the book. So like, again, you start out, this guy is stuck on a planet. We are just trying to figure out if we can keep him alive. And they keep adding like issues that I know may be realistic to have, but it just got to a point where it just felt very, like the tension felt very manufactured, and it was like done I don't think it was done in a good way. Like the setup takes on a completely different voice. It takes on, instead of like the first person of this, it takes on this the first person of his diary entries. It takes on this omniscient sense, this omniscient voice, and just describes everything. And either it'll describe it like 2 seconds, it'll start giving you like description of it 2 seconds before the event's supposed to happen, or it'll tell you, or it'll be like right after everything happened, just a quick explanation of what went wrong. And like the issue is, it's just to a point, it got to a point where I'm like, why do I care about these things? Like, of course, like something's gonna break halfway through. Like the 6th thing broke halfway through the book, and I'm at that point of like, he's gonna survive. Why do I care? So I started skimming some of these major conflict points, because it just felt like he's gonna be okay. He's gonna survive. Why am I reading this? Why are you trying to like stress me out over this book when I know he's gonna be okay? It's like, it's that feeling people get with some superhero movies where it's like, they're gonna be okay, everything's gonna be all right in the end. Why do I care? And it's just done so many times throughout this book. There's also, what else did I say about this? I have like 8 different notes in my notes about this, specifically talking about tension. It's just, and it just becomes such a problem where there's so many tension points. Like the hab explodes and potatoes die. His rover rolls over. There's a storm now, and like every single time, it's like everything's fine. They figure it out. Everything's fine. I spend 5 minutes having to read how they figure it out. The one that bothered me the most was like at the very end, there was a hole in his ship. They had to strip apart the ship that he was supposed to go off on. They had to strip it apart and cover it in canvas, and it breaks while it was launching. It breaks, and that causes it to drag like further than it was supposed to. And so then he's not close enough for them to be able to catch it in their ship. And so they're like, you know what we should do? We should turn our propulsion so we go towards him, like use as much gas as we can but save enough so we can actually make it back to Earth. And then they're like, okay, we'll do that, but we'll be going too fast. And they're like, okay, you know what we'll do? We'll blow the hatch so that way it'll stop everything enough for us to be able to slow down, be in his speed, and keep going, and everyone can be safe and home. And that would have been fine. Even that, like at that point, I was still like kind of over the tension in this story, but that would have been fine. But then they're like, okay, but we can't manually open we only have the ability to manually open the hatch. So we can't like do it with a remote. We can't do anything like that. How are we going to do it? Let's build a bomb. And then they try and create this tension around building a bomb on a spaceship. And I was just so done at that point. I'm like, everything's going to be okay. Whatever. It's fine. It just got to a point where I just didn't care, because I knew the story. I knew the characters were all going to be okay. I knew that this book was like, this book really did not seem like it had the guts to do all of this and not have him survive. And honestly, like, I know I was at the earlier points, like talking about being halfway through the book. There's still half a book here. He's not going to die right now. But there's also, when I was looking at that scene and like they're making the bomb, I was like, there's like 2 pages left in this book, guys. You don't have enough space for a eulogy there, so like he's gonna be fine. And it made it really hard to like want to get into and feel like empathize with the characters and what they're going through, because it just felt like I was being asked to get super emotionally involved way too many times for it, especially with no real issues. Like, he literally had like 0 scratches or bumps this entire time. He's the superhero. I get it. Just get to the end of the book. It felt very dragged out. But again, I would definitely say it's not to the point where I wouldn't recommend this book. I do think this would be a good read. I think some people should check it out. I really like the cover too. It's so pretty. I got it for like $1 at the library. So, because it's one of those books where they had like a discard section. I used to get so many books at my like public school's discard section. but like this was in their discard section, so they sell those books. You can like give money to get a book, and so that's what I did. And I like it was definitely worth $1. It's a good read if you have the ability. You should check it out. I do think it's a good book. It's not Lost Stars level, but it is a good book. So feel free if you have time or if you have the ability to check it out. Next book that I'm going to read, I was actually going relatively back and forth on this because originally I was going to read this book before I fall, but I felt like I appreciate being able to have this time to actually just sit down and read, But I do think I really would like that book was really big, and I wanted some time to be able to enjoy the book and not feel like I have to rush through it, even though like I'm not likely going to be able to read a physical sit down iced to paper book in a while. So I just got so much stuff to do. So I'm actually going to be reading this book. This is very similar to my like collection of Melrose. Maybe like it seemed interesting, and Benedict Cumberbatch was on the cover, so I felt like I had to get it. The first book that I'm going to read is like only this big, so it shouldn't take me forever to read. But I'll end up reading 2 of them. Who knows? Who knows how I'll be feeling? But that'd be this much. That'd be so much paper. I might I might end up just reading the first one, but that's okay. Because then I'll still have plenty to talk with you guys about. So if you want to help me get more time to read print books, then you should go check out my Patreon. Patreon.com/bbomb2343. If you look up No Ordinary Scholar, that's a good way to find it too. Over there, you can support me for as little as $2 a month. They currently have I put it away. I put it in the bookshelf because I was so excited to be done. But they currently have the first chapter of the book that I put out, The Queen of Themes, A New Throne. That book is currently available for pre-order if you wanted to check that out on Amazon.com. It is also going to be available for purchase on the 24th of this month. So if you wanted to check that out, that'd be really nice, and I'd really appreciate it. I worked so hard. I cried many tears. So if you want to check out that book, you got that book there. I also have Tormenta de Fuego, 2343 and Firestorm 2343 Instagram accounts if you want to see a little bit more spontaneity from me. I'm working on trying to figure out how, because I'm trying to do more live streams and do more with you guys. Trying to figure out how that's going to work. I would like to do study with me style streams. I want to try and do that, so we'll see how it works. We'll see if we can get that going, but I'll keep you in the heads up. I'll keep you in the know about all of that stuff. So until next time, valedictions, friends.